Brought to you by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor.
Welcome to New Jersey Capital Report. I'm Rafael P. Roman.
And I'm Steve Adubato. We are honored to have with us here in our studio at NJ TV, Jim Zazzali, James R. Zazzali, the former Chief Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court and the former Attorney General in the great state of New Jersey. Good to see you, Chief.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Also tied to the law firm that's not too far away from here, the Gibbons Law Firm. I want to ask you, Chief, the importance of the Supreme Court in the state of New Jersey. Why is it so significant, and what is its impact on the citizens, the 8 million citizens of this state?
Well, the Supreme Court, of course, is the guiding factor for the rest of the judiciary, all 600 or 700 judges, whatever the number may be right now, although it's a little bit lower. Keep in mind, Steve, that we have 1 million consumers of justice in the state of New Jersey every year. Over 1 million citizens of the state use our judicial system. Admittedly, it's generally at the municipal court, but that municipal court appearance is just as important to that individual concerning a traffic ticket or whatever as the bank that may have a matter before the Supreme Court. In addition, the court is supervising the trial judges, again, the hundreds of them, and it itself resolves the many, many issues that face not just the banks and the corporations and the insurance companies, but the average person on the street, whether it's a domestic violence issue or the truck driver who is injured on his way to work or to lunch, and he wants workers' compensation for that issue. So we care about everybody.
Now, Chief, the Supreme Court of New Jersey has a national reputation as to, it's like the bar that people try to reach or other states try to reach. Tell us in some ways that ordinary New Jerseyans are affected every day by decisions that were made by the Supreme Court.
By the way, stay on that, Raf. The national reputation is for, let's say, he'll correct us if I'm wrong, independence, neutrality. Is that what the reputation is?
Yeah, before we go there, just one correction. I used the editorial we. I'm no longer there. I haven't been there for 9 years. I'm truly a has-been. So
well, we wouldn't say that.
Well, we want to make it clear that there's a mandatory retirement age in the Supreme Court of 70.
Yeah.
There is a mandatory retirement age. If you want me to comment on that,
but in a second. Let's do it in a second. But go to my question.
Independence and neutrality are the keys to the success and the reputation of the Supreme Court.
And what are some of the decisions that affect our daily lives that you guys have made?
This court continues to be on the cutting edge. Only very recently, for the first time in the history of the country, the court is the first Supreme Court to hold that these machines here are subject to traditional search and seizure law, and that a police officer has to have a search warrant in order to get information from that iPhone.
The Supreme Court did that.
The Supreme Court did that, and it's been heralded as a critical decision. Once again, as it has been the history of the court for 50 years, we were on the cutting edge, and we continue to be. Another example would be, for example, the eyewitness issue. A few years ago, not too long ago, the court held that eyewitnesses' identifications of defendants are often suspect. Now, as a former assistant prosecutor when I was a kid 30 years ago in this county, more than that.
Essex County.
Essex County, 45 years ago. I can tell you I had many cases, and even though I was a prosecutor, I sometimes was concerned about the quality of the identification. And the court has recognized that today, that these identifications are often flawed, and therefore they've established a framework to protect the citizen and the defendants.
And one that really affects a lot of people in New Jersey is how the schools are funded.
Oh, that's right.
The schools are funded in a way that were largely determined by rulings of the court. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if you notice, the authorities and the experts in the country are recognizing the very fine education system that we have in the public system in New Jersey. It's not getting enough recognition, but I think that's attributable in part to the leadership that the court has provided over the years and is providing today under Chief Justice Rabner.
And Chief Justice Rabner, let's put that in perspective. The case that Raf talks about, otherwise known in the beginning as Abbott versus Burke. To put this in perspective for folks, so we're really clear, it is the legislature, to get 3 branches of government, the legislature, the executive, the governor, and the judiciary. It was determined that the school funding formulas were not fair to originally 28 original districts, mostly urban districts, otherwise known as Abbott districts, right?
Correct.
Named after Abbott, who was the Commissioner of Education at the time. Long story short, because it was determined in a court case that not enough money was being sent to those urban poor school districts, the Supreme Court intervened and made a decision that additional dollars had to be sent to those Abbott school districts. Now I believe it's 31. What do you say to those who argue, Chief, that sometimes the court, quote, oversteps its bounds and makes legislative decisions, even though others say, wait a minute, if the court didn't step in, nobody would make the decision at all?
Very simply, it's an overstatement and misunderstanding as to what the court has done in those cases. It interprets the Constitution. Of
1947.
Of 1947, that's the Constitution that made the judiciary such a great judiciary and helped to make the state a better state. And that's what we do. We don't politicize matters. We do not legislate. We interpret the Constitution, and we interpret statutes. It's all the same question because we get the same criticism when we interpret statutes. We constantly say we are interpreting the legislative intent. We're not looking at what we intend. We're looking at what the legislature intended to do in a particular
And Raf,
case.
what the chief is referring to, obviously, is the fact that in the 1947 Constitution, it says that every child in every public school in the state of New Jersey, and if I get this wrong, tell me, Chief, will receive a, quote, thorough and efficient education. And if that does not happen, it is the courts.
It's a violation of the Constitution.
You're violating the Constitution.
And we make an appropriate determination. We apply the intent, not our intent, but the intent of the forefathers. People like Justice Brennan, who sat on that in that convention. A correction before, I think it was Burke, who was the Commissioner of Education.
Burke and Abbott brought the case.
Brendan Byrne brought Burke down from Rhode Island.
Who brought? Yes, got it. I'm sorry.
Now, Chief, just as the Supreme Court of New Jersey has a stellar reputation for neutrality and independence across the country, among conservatives, particularly conservatives in this state, it has a reputation of being an activist court. You say it only interprets, but many Republicans and conservatives argue that it has interpreted very liberally. In all sense of that word, what the Constitution says. Is there merit to that argument? Has it tilted to the left, center left, the court?
It's tilted towards justice and fairness for all. And that's not a cliche. I thought sure you were going to the Lautenberg decision.
Yes, I was. That was the follow-up decision.
Let's talk about that.
Real quick. Put that in context for people.
Put it in perspective, you bet. That was a decision which was unanimous.
But no, people don't remember. Frank Lautenberg.
What is the decision? 2002, I believe.
2002. There was a vacancy in the United States Senate because Senator Zazzali resigned.
Yes.
The Democratic Party decided to to nominate, in effect, Lautenberg.
Who had been a previous United States Senator, stepped down,
right.
And the Democrats said, we're putting him back.
Well, we should say that the Republican candidate at the time was beating
Doug Forrester.
Doug Forrester was ahead in the polls of Torso.
Yeah, and there was a question whether, under the statute, it was too late. In other words, was the nomination of Lautenberg too late? The Supreme Court held that he could run. But let's put it in a political perspective. You had a Supreme Court that was a majority Republicans, as I recall.
Majority Republicans.
But I certainly know this for sure, that 6 out of the 7 justices were appointed by Republican governors. Right. The Chief Justice, Deborah Porridge, great Chief Justice,
was Republican.
At that time, Republican didn't mean conservative in this state.
Well, all I can tell you is that she cited prior Republican conservative Chief Justice.
A Republican Chief Justice.
She cited Vanderbilt in support of her decision and our decision, in which we all joined. And basically, we ruled the way we did because we felt that the public should have a choice.
But you felt that way, but the letter of the law said that it was too late to replace the candidate.
That's your view, okay? Your view, with all due respect.
I didn't used to be Chief Justice, that's true.
I don't think you're going to be nominated for Chief Justice. But to be clear, the whole point here, Chief, was the decision was to let Frank Lautenberg be on that ticket because it was in the best interest of the voters of the state to have a choice. Am I correct?
Exactly. And the cornerstone of any democracy is choice in an election. And if you don't have that, have that. That's when you have demagogues who later become dictators.
Final question. Mandatory age of retirement in the Supreme Court is 70, correct?
Yes.
Should there be mandatory retirement age in public broadcasting?
For you, but not for your partner.
Good answer.
Thank you, Chief. That's good.
Justice.
Okay.
See,
Thank you,
that's
Chief
why we
Justice.
got him.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ralph.
At the annual Verizon kickoff breakfast for the Walk to Washington, Steve had the opportunity to speak with Michael Smith, president of Berkeley College. They talked about higher education and about job opportunities for life after college. Here now is that conversation.
Think this is absurd? Insurance fraud costs every New Jersey family over $1,300 every year. Report fraud at njinsurancefraud.org.
Also brought to you by Delta Dental of New Jersey, the Give Something Back Foundation, and by Hackensack University Health Network.